You have probably done yoga in a bright studio, on a rubber mat, reaching for your toes to a playlist. The man who actually wrote down what yoga is supposed to be over 2,000 years ago would barely recognize almost any of it. His name was Patanjali. Legend says a yogini named Gonika, praying for a son worthy of carrying her knowledge forward, once lifted her cupped hands in offering to the sun, and a small serpent fell into them and became a child. She named him Patanjali, the one who fell into folded hands, sometime around the 2nd century before the Common Era. Though scholars still argue over the exact date, he gathered everything into one text, the Yoga Sutras, just 196 short verses, so compressed they read almost like a code, meant to be unpacked slowly by a teacher over years, not read once like a story. It opens with 4 words, Hatha Yoga, Anu Shasanam. Now, the teaching of yoga begins, and then, immediately, the actual definition, Yogash, chitta, vritti, nirodhah. Yoga is the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind, not the body, the mind. He catalogued exactly what needed stilling. 5 kinds of mental static: correct knowledge, misconception, imagination, sleep, memory. This, he said, is the ordinary noise of being a person, and yoga was his method for finally quieting it. To reach that quiet, he laid out a path in 8 limbs, Ashtanga. Each limb builds on the one before it, moving from how you treat the world outward, all the way in, to a state most people never even knew was possible. The first limb, Yama, was ethical restraint, 5 commitments before any meditation could even begin: non-violence, truthfulness, not stealing, not overindulging, not grasping at possessions. For Patanjali, how you lived came before. The second limb, Niyama, turned inward: personal cleanliness, contentment with what you have, self-discipline, studying your own mind, and surrendering the outcome. Only after this foundation did the sutras even mention sitting down to meditate, which brings us to the third limb, Asana. In the original text, this single word meant one thing only: a steady, comfortable seat you could hold still in for a long meditation. Not a single backbend, not one handstand. The elaborate physical postures the world now calls yoga were developed by a completely different tradition, Hatha Yoga. More than 1,000 years later, the fourth limb, Pranayama, was breath control, deliberately slowing and regulating the breath, because Patanjali understood something modern science only recently confirmed. An erratic breath keeps an erratic mind, and a steady breath is the fastest door back to a steady one. The fifth limb, Pratyahara, meant withdrawing the senses, pulling attention away from sound, sight, and sensation. The way a turtle draws its limbs inward. Only once the outside world stopped pulling at you could the real inward work begin. The sixth limb, Dharana, was concentration, choosing one single point, a breath, a flame, a word, and returning the mind to it again and again, every single time. The seventh limb, Dhyana, was meditation proper, not a single moment of focus, but an unbroken stream of it, sustained so long that the effort of concentrating finally disappeared. And the eighth limb, Samadhi, was the point past effort entirely. The meditator, the act of meditating, and the object being meditated on stopped feeling like 3 separate things and simply became one. Patanjali called the final goal Kaivalya. Not union with a god, but aloneness, pure consciousness, finally recognizing itself as separate from the mind, the body, and every thought it had ever mistaken for its true self. Here is the strange part. Patanjali's name is also attached to a landmark commentary on Sanskrit grammar and to a classical text on medicine. Most scholars now believe these were written centuries apart by different people entirely, one revered name, carried by more than one mind. For centuries, the Yoga Sutras themselves were nearly forgotten, overshadowed by devotional movements that found the older, drier, eight-limbed path too austere for ordinary worship. Then, in the 20th century, a revival of interest collided with an entirely new physical culture movement, both in India and the West. And yoga re-emerged in the world's imagination, looking almost nothing like Patanjali's original 8 limbs, with postures front and center, and everything else quietly pushed to the back. So the next time you are on a mat, it is worth asking the question Patanjali actually cared about, not how far you can stretch. What exactly are you trying to still? If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and join us for more tales from Kathavana, stories that outlive time.